guys, this is Caleb with DSLR Video Shooter, and today I'm going to break down my lighting setup for my podcasts. Obviously, this particular setup isn't normally what I do, so I wanted to go over the stuff I use, the gear, as well as a couple quick techniques. Now, to begin with, I have a very small space to work out of. I live in a one-bedroom apartment. I don't have a studio, so I use this space to do all of my filming as well as my editing, and I also live here. So that right out of the gate causes some issues because I need to have a living space but also rearrange things to film. So normally what I do, and I'll show you some footage of the room that I use before I move stuff around as well as after. So the first thing I have to do is move everything around. This couch that I sit on is completely moved out of the way, and I use this wall behind me for all of my videos. You'll notice in the room that I have a huge window, and I use that as my key light. I'm also going to be showing you kind of three setups. One is using only the windows and natural light. The second is using a light mounted on a C-stand, which actually you can see right behind me here, for my background light, and then a smaller LED panel for my kicker. And then you'll also see a setup that has the same LED panel for the background, but instead of having it on a C-stand, I literally use the yoke and I just set it right on the ground. So if you're doing something like this or looking to set up a studio, kind of a setup in your home, the first thing I would recommend is just to grab your camera and whatever lens you're going to be using and move around your space, try some different angles. Keep in mind, you're going to want to focus on what your background is. For me, it's a plain wall because I can use lighting against it to make kind of a dynamic setup. And the other thing you're going to want to think about is the light. Where the light's coming from. Are you going to use artificial light or are you going to use natural light? So once I've moved everything out of the way, I begin setting up all of my gear. And of course, because I'm using such a limited amount of space, I really try to keep the gear to a minimal. And so I'm going to show you everything I use, and you can pretty much see everything in the shot. I have my set of sticks, my camera, which really all you need is a camera and a lens. You wouldn't need a cage or anything like this. And then I have three light stands, the C-stand, and then these two impact light stands. These are pretty cheap. They're very small and pretty light. You can get these on B&H. If you go to DSLR Video Shooter, you'll find all the links to the stuff below this video. And so these are fantastic because they're small, they pack down, and everything you see here, I pack all into a small closet. So it works really well for a setup like this where I don't have a lot of space. This is great because I have all these other things I use all mounted together. So I have this Velcro strap that holds my two stands together, a clamp, which I use to hold this little focus / gray and white chart. And that's how I focus, which I'll talk about in a second. So that's the light stands. The actual lights I use is this guy right here, which is an ePhoto 500. I use that for the background. It's got a dimmer on it, which is great because I can control, as you can see, the background light, and that's really nice because I'm using natural light. Every day is a little different. I'll have an overcast day, so I'm not getting as much sunlight, or I'll have a blue sky, blazing sun day, and I have a ton of light. So the dimmer is really nice because I can control the ratios there. The other light I use is this little guy right here. This is the torch LED, from Swittronics. It's great because it also has dimmers and it also has two color temperatures that I can mix. So this also helps me, and I use that normally right off to the side and back, and that creates a little bit of a hair light, separates me from the background and hits my shoulder, and it also hits the gear. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, but that's really important because a lot of the time you have all this black gear, and it's nice to kind of separate that and really be able to see that and have that pop off the background. So that's really it for gear. The only other thing is audio, and all I do is I use my Sennheiser wireless lapel, this guy right here, and I run this straight into the camera because I know I'm going to the web, so I'm not really willing to deal with dual system audio. The quality is going to be compressed, so this is so much faster. And what I do is just right before I record, I go into the camera, set it to manual audio, check my levels real quick, do a test, and it's usually fine. So that works great. These things are fantastic. If you wanted to have a more permanent setup or were willing to deal with more equipment, you'd want to use a boom microphone, and that would be much better, especially for a room like this. This is a very live room. It's actually a terrible room to be recording in, but it's what I have to work with, and so I make do. So that's it for gear. Now I'm going to talk about the process for setting it all up. So once I've moved everything out of the way, the first thing I do is throw the camera on the sticks. I usually have it over in a corner, which you'll see, and I angle it so that I have the wall obviously in the background, and that the main windows are acting as a key coming from the one side. Once I have the camera set up, I then go ahead and set up my background light. And to do this, I just set up my C-stand, and what's great about the C-stand is because it has this arm coming off of it, you can get it directly behind yourself, but without any stand. Because if you're using a normal stand, obviously that would be in your shot. So that's what's so great about the C-stand, is you can get it really, really high and over. So once I have that set up, I kind of dial in the background light. I check my camera. The one other thing that is optional but is really helpful when you're by yourself is a monitor. So right above the camera, I have mounted a small HD DP4, and so I'll look at that. I'll check to make sure the background light isn't blown out or too low. Then I set up my first light stand, and I'll just do this real quick. Open up my strap. And what I do is I just take the light here, and I'm sure you could set up more of a quick release setup, but this works for me. I attach it to the light, and this I then stick, the way I set it up is I start it in the shot and I slowly move it until it's just out of the shot. And my goal is to get it as close as behind me as I can without it being in the shot. So once I have that set up, I then angle it and I dial in the exposure for this light. So we'll set that over here for now. And then that gives me that nice hair light. Sometimes I'll record a little bit, go over to the camera, check it, make sure everything looks good. Once I have that light set up, I then need to set my focus, which is very difficult to do when you're by yourself and you're going to be in front of the camera. So what I do is I set up my third and final light stand. And what I do is I set this light stand to about my height. So because I'm sitting down, it's going to be something like that. And then I take my little target here and I clamp that onto the light stand. So the next step is to position this right where I'm going to be standing. And what I do is, because I have this nice wood floor with the wooden slats, I like to set it so that the center of the light stand is directly over one of those slats. What this allows me to do is to set this up, go over to my camera, set the framing, because this allows me to essentially check the headroom, and then I focus, and then when I go back over to where I'm going to be standing, I can slide this along the floor and keep the center of the light stand right in that slat. That way, if I have to go over and adjust the light and then I have to come back to my spot, I can just look at the light stand and make sure that I'm parallel with it, and then I'm all set. Now you could put tape on the floor. I just don't want to deal with constantly pulling tape off the floor, putting it back down, because that's not necessary, and I have to set this up anyway to check my focus. So that's how I do that. It's also a great way for exposure, and I can deal with white balance if I need to that way. So let's set that over there. And really that's about it. So now what I want to do is I want to show you kind of some before and after. I'm going to show you a shot with just me standing in front of the wall without any artificial light. Then I'm going to show you with all the lights, and then I'm going to show you a shot with this guy on the ground. So if you can't afford a C-stand, you can definitely get away without that. And the way I do that is I literally just set the LED panel on the ground, angle it up, and because it has these barn doors, you can be really creative with how you block light. That way it won't shine back on you from behind. So that's it for this episode. If you have any questions about lighting, definitely send me an email or comment on this video, and stay tuned for more stuff on DSLRvideoshooter.com.